Welcome to all-night society. The silence after the hooded man vanished was absolute. It wasn't the usual quiet of a country night. It was a vacuum, a held breath. The only sound was the frantic, uneven buzz of the fluorescents and the thud of Jamie's own heart against his ribs. He stared at the 3 coins on the counter. They were old, tarnished dimes, arranged in a perfect, unsettling triangle. He didn't dare touch them. His eyes snapped to the clock. 3:12 a.m. The newspaper clipping. It lay in the open hatch of the rusty car, glowing faintly under the station's sickly light. The engine hadn't started. The car hadn't moved. It was just open. Jamie's legs felt like water, but a morbid, terrified curiosity pulled him forward. The night air was cold, biting through his thin uniform shirt. Each step toward the car was an act of defiance against every screaming instinct. He reached the hatchback, his breath plumbing in the air. Clipping was from the * Cedar Creek Gazette. The paper was indeed damp, not with rain, but with something thicker, coppery. The headline was stark. Night clerk found deceased at Cedar Creek Gas. Below it was a grainy photo of the station's interior, taken from behind the counter. In the reflection of the glass door, a blurry figure in a hoodie could be seen. The article was brief, stating that Jamie Ellis, 24, had been discovered by the morning shift at 6 a.m. Cause of death unknown. The time of death was estimated at approximately 3:13 a.m. The date on the paper was today's date. A wave of nausea hit him. This wasn't a prank. The paper felt real, smelled real ink, and that strange, metallic dampness. He looked back at the empty station. The counter, the silent aisles, the buzzing lights. His domain. His tomb. 3:13 a.m. The flickering lights inside the station suddenly died, plunging the storefront into blackness. Only the overhead canopy lights over the pumps remained, casting long, distorted shadows. One of those shadows, Jamie realized with a jolt of pure ice, was wrong. It was too tall, too still. It wasn't cast by the pumps. He turned slowly. The hooded figure stood beside pump number 4, facing the road. It was perfectly motionless, a cutout of deeper darkness. It wasn't looking at him, but its presence was a physical pressure, a cold spot in the world. Jamie's paralysis broke. He stumbled back into the station, fumbling for the phone behind the counter. His fingers slipped on the buttons. No dial tone, just a soft, staticky whisper that sounded like rustling newspaper. He dropped the receiver and ran for the back office, locking the flimsy door behind him. He pressed his back against it, sliding down to the floor, eyes fixed on the digital clock on the desk. 3:13 a.m. The number blinked once, then held. A soft asterisk tap 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 came from the other side of the office door. Not on the wood, but on the glass window that looked out into the store. Slow, deliberate, 3 taps. Jamie squeezed his eyes shut, praying for sunrise. When the morning manager found him at 5:45 a.m., Jamie was still huddled in the office, shivering uncontrollably. The coins were gone from the counter. The rusty hatchback was nowhere to be seen. There was no damp newspaper clipping, but on the clean, wiped surface of the counter, under the flickering fluorescent light, were 3 faint, perfect circles of condensation, arranged in a triangle. Jamie quit that day. He moved to the city, took a day job, and never spoke of that night to anyone who hadn't grown up in Cedar Creek. The story, however, became local legend. Teenagers dare each other to drive past the station after 3 a.m. Most see nothing, but a very few, report seeing a dark, silent figure standing by pump 4. And they all say the same thing. You don't see it look at you. You just feel it. And your radio, without fail, fills with the sound of rustling paper before going dead. The fluorescent lights above pump 7 had been flickering for 3 weeks, casting intermittent shadows across the cracked asphalt. Marcus had asked his manager about fixing it twice, but corporate kept pushing the repair to next quarter. Tonight, working the graveyard shift alone at the 24-hour speedy gas, he wished he'd been more persistent. It was 3:17 a.m. when the car pulled up to pump 7. Marcus looked up from his magazine, squinting through the bulletproof glass. The vehicle was an old sedan, maybe from the 80s, with paint so faded it was hard to tell what color it had originally been. Steam rose from under its hood, and even from inside the station, he could hear the engine's labored wheezing. The driver sat motionless for several minutes. Marcus watched, waiting for them to get out, but the car just idled under the stuttering light. The engine coughed and sputtered, then went silent. Finally, the door opened. The man who emerged moved with deliberate slowness, as if every step required careful consideration. He was tall and gaunt, wearing a dark coat that seemed too heavy for the mild October night. His face remained hidden beneath the brim of an old baseball cap as he approached the pump. Marcus returned to his magazine, occasionally glancing up. The man had been standing at the pump for nearly 10 minutes without moving. No gas cap removed, no card inserted, just standing there with his back to the station. The bell above the door chimed. "Evening," Marcus called out, forcing a smile. "Everything okay out there?" The customer didn't respond. He walked down the snack aisle with that same measured pace, his footsteps eerily quiet on the linoleum floor. Marcus couldn't see his face. The cap's brim cast a deep shadow, and the man kept his head down. "Can I help you find anything?" Marcus tried again. The man stopped in front of the coffee machine. The fluorescent light above flickered in sync with Pump 7's malfunctioning fixture, creating a strobing effect that made the customer's movements appear jerky and unnatural. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his girlfriend. "How's work? Boring night." When he looked up, the man was standing directly in front of the counter. Marcus hadn't heard him approach. "Just the coffee," the man said. His voice was dry, like autumn leaves scraping against pavement. "That'll be $2.49. The customer reached into his coat pocket and pulled out exact change, placing it coin by coin on the counter with methodical precision. His fingers were unnaturally pale, almost gray in the harsh light. "Rough night for driving," Marcus commented, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. "Car trouble." For the first time, the man raised his head slightly. Marcus caught a glimpse of his eyes, or where his eyes should have been. The shadow from the cap was too deep, too dark, as if it were swallowing light instead of merely blocking it. "I'm almost home," the man whispered. He turned and walked toward the door, coffee in hand. The bell chimed again as he left, and Marcus watched through the window as he returned to Pump 7. But instead of getting in his car, the man just stood beside it, perfectly still, facing the station. Marcus checked the time. 3:33 a.m. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Speedy gas. This is Marcus." Heavy breathing filled the line. followed by that same dry voice. "Thank you for your service." The line went dead. Marcus looked toward pump 7. The man was gone. The car was gone. But the coffee cup sat on the hood of a different car at pump 5, a vehicle that definitely hadn't been there moments before. Marcus rubbed his eyes, wondering if exhaustion was playing tricks on him. When he looked again, pump 5 was empty too. He walked outside to investigate, the cool air raising goosebumps on his arms. At pump 7, he found something that made his blood run cold. The exact change the man had given him, arranged in a perfect circle on the concrete. In the center lay a newspaper clipping, yellowed and fragile. The headline read, "Local man dies in late-night car accident at Speedy gas station." The date was exactly 1 year ago. The accompanying photo showed the same intersection, the same gas station, and a mangled sedan that looked remarkably similar to the car he'd just seen. Marcus picked up the clipping with trembling hands. According to the article, the victim had been driving home from his night shift job when his car broke down at the station. While attempting to push it to safety, he was struck by a drunk driver and killed instantly at 3:33 a.m. The victim's name was printed at the bottom of the article. But that wasn't what made Marcus drop the paper and sprint back inside. It was the quote from the man's supervisor. He always said thank you after every interaction. That was just the kind of person he was grateful for every small kindness, right up until the end. Marcus locked the door and called his manager, hands shaking as he dialed. The phone rang once before going to voicemail. He tried corporate's emergency line. Same result. Outside, pump 7's light had stopped flickering. It now cast a steady, cold glow over the empty station, and Marcus could swear he saw the outline of a figure standing just beyond its reach, waiting patiently in the darkness. He never worked another night shift at Speedy Gas. The new employee who replaced him lasted exactly 1 week before quitting without explanation. The position has remained vacant ever since, and pump 7's light was permanently disconnected after too many customers complained about the strange man. They'd see standing there in the early morning hours. Local employees at the gas station now have an unspoken rule. If someone approaches pump 7 after 3 a.m., especially in an old sedan. Just give them whatever they want and don't ask questions. Some customers, they say, have been driving home for far longer than anyone should. The quiet of the night shift was Lena's sanctuary. From midnight until dawn, the remote highway gas station was hers alone. A bubble of fluorescent hum and the distant, rhythmic sigh of tires on asphalt. The silence was a companion, not an enemy. Until 2:47 a.m. That's when the black sedan arrived. It didn't roar or sputter. It glided into the halo of light around Pump 3, soundless, its headlights dark. Lena watched from behind the bulletproof glass. The driver emerged tall, swathed in a long coat, his face a shadow under a wide-brimmed hat. His movements were too smooth, deliberate, as if he were navigating a different current of air. He didn't look toward the convenience store. He simply stood beside his car, facing the pump. "Hey," Lena called over the intercom, her voice brittle in the dead air. "You need to prepay inside." He didn't flinch. The silence thickened, becoming a physical weight on her chest. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then she heard it, the soft, gritty crunch of tires slowly rolling over concrete. Her eyes snapped to the sedan. It hadn't moved an inch. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. Grabbing the heavy-duty flashlight, she pushed the door open, the bell jangling a shrill alarm. The night air was unnaturally still and cold. Pump 3 was idle. The driver was gone. The sedan sat, dark and empty. Shining the light at her feet, she froze. Etched into the oil-stained concrete were footprints. They were small, a child's size, and they glistened wetly under the beam. They led from the pump directly to where she stood, and then stopped, as if the maker had simply evaporated into the air. Lena stumbled back inside, locking the door. The clock read 3:03 a.m. Heart hammering, she tried to steady her breathing by focusing on the mundane: the coffee machine, the rack of chips. She glanced at the reflective glass of the snack cooler. He was there, reflected in the glass. The tall driver stood directly behind her, inside the locked store, his hat brim obscuring his face. Lena's blood turned to ice. She spun around, a scream caught in her throat. The aisle was empty, but the feeling remained a paralyzing certainty that she was not alone. She spent the final hour pressed against the counter, watching the pump, watching the reflections, watching the clock. At 4 a.m., the first gray hint of dawn bled into the sky. With the light, the footprints had vanished. The pump looked ordinary, just metal and numbers. She quit that morning. They say if you stop for gas on that lonely stretch of highway between 2 and 4 in the morning, you'll feel it, a prickle on your neck, a sense of profound observation. The pump will work. The transaction will complete. But in your rearview mirror as you drive away, you might see a tall, still figure by the concrete island, or a set of small, wet footprints leading to your driver's side door. They say it doesn't want your gas. It just wants to be seen. And once it is, it never really leaves.